Welcome to Witch Hunt Victim Stories. I'm Josh Hutchinson, and today I'll be telling the story of Samuel Wardwell, a sometime fortune teller and palm reader from Andover, Massachusetts, who was hanged September 22nd, 1692, a victim of the Salem Witch Trials. Samuel had the distinction of being the only confessor who was hanged as a result of the Salem witch hunt. Hear how this New Hampshire-born carpenter got caught up in the whirlwind of accusations and eventually suffered a cruel fate at Proctor's Ledge in Salem at the age of 49. Samuel Wardwell was born in Exeter, New Hampshire on May 16, 1643. His parents, Elizabeth and Thomas, had moved from Boston to New Hampshire with antinomian minister John Wheelwright and others of his congregation in 1638 and founded the town of Exeter. Samuel's father died in 1646, leaving his mother a widow caring for 4 children on her own. At age of 12 or 13, Samuel was apprenticed to a carpenter. Samuel's brother Eliakim married Lydia Perkins in 1659. Both had accepted the Quaker faith, for which they were fined, and Eliakim was placed in the stocks. In 1663, Lydia walked into a church service totally naked to protest Puritanism and was sentenced to 30 lashes on her bare back. Eliakim and Lydia then moved their family to East Jersey. Samuel Wardwell married his first wife by 1670, and she died by 1672, leaving behind an infant son named Thomas. Samuel was granted 20 acres in Andover's south end. His land abutted that of Mary Ayer Parker and Nathan Parker. Samuel married Sarah Hooper Hawks of Reading on January 9, 1673. She was the mother of an infant named Sarah, and her first husband had been related remotely to Elizabeth Hart and John Proctor. William Hathorne read the marriage contract. He had been a judge on the court that sentenced Lydia Wardwell to the 30 lashes, and his son, of course, was John Hathorne. Sarah and Samuel had 6 children together, in addition to Samuel's son Thomas and Sarah's daughter Sarah. Altogether, it was a household of 10 people. Samuel received more land in 1675 and 1678. Despite being known as a fortune teller and palm reader, he was never taken to court on any form of criminal charges until 1692, when, on September 1st, William Barker Jr., in his confession, named Sarah and Samuel Wardwell, their daughter Mercy, and Sarah's daughter Sarah Hawks, from their previous marriage. They were all arrested and examined the same day, and they all confessed. Samuel confessed to fortune-telling and being in league with the devil. He said that he had frequently told rogue animals to go to the devil when they wandered onto his fields. That and telling fortunes may have invited the devil in. Ephraim Foster said Samuel had once boasted he could make his cattle come to him whenever he wanted. Samuel said he had been discontented 20 years ago by unrequited love for a woman named Barker. He said while he was in this discontented state, some cats appeared behind Captain Bradstreet's house, along with the appearance of a man who called himself a prince of the air. This air prince man promised Samuel he would be successful and be a militia captain. Samuel promised to honor him and signed a book the man had brought, with pen and ink also provided by the prince of the air. He signed by making a mark like a square. Samuel covenanted to serve this air prince guy until the age of 60. A week later, another man came to him in broad daylight in the same place and called himself prince and lord and told Samuel he must worship and believe him, and then he would never want for anything. But Samuel admitted this man had never given him a thing in all those years. Since then, when he would try to pray with his family, the devil would be angry. Though the devil had come to Samuel 20 years ago, Samuel had only begun afflicting people 2 weeks before this hearing. Mary Lily and Hannah Taylor were of his company. The devil had threatened him and forced him to afflict Martha Sprague by pinching his coat and buttons. He gave the devil a commission to afflict. The devil had baptized Samuel with complete immersion in the Shawshan River. At that point, Samuel renounced his Christian baptism. Sarah Hawks, Samuel's stepdaughter, confessed to using a sieve and scissors for divination. That's when the devil came and she promised to serve him. She and her mother confessed to attending a witch meeting in Salem Village, and Sarah Hawks said she'd seen a dozen witches there riding poles, but didn't know them. Mercy Wardwell said she had been baptized by the devil and had signed a piece of paper he gave her. On September 2nd, Mercy Wardwell testified against Mary Parker, claiming to be afflicted by her in court while also claiming that Parker was one of her company. 2 weeks later, September 16th, Mercy said that when she was afflicting Timothy Swan and Martha Sprague, she had seen the shape of Mary Parker there as well. Mary Taylor confessed after Samuel spoke against her in court on Monday, September 5th. He accused her of killing his brother-in-law, William Hooper. Samuel attended other hearings and encouraged other suspects to confess. Then, on Tuesday, September 13th, Samuel Wardwell recanted his confession when it was read at his grand jury. He thought he should die for it whether he owned it or no. He was indicted for covenanting and for bewitching Martha Sprague. Robert Califf, in More Wonders of the Invisible World, wrote about Samuel's trial, which was sometime the week of September 12th, 1692, after his September 13th indictment. Califf wrote that spectral evidence was used at the trial, as was Samuel's confession, which, according to Cotton Mather, included a statement that at their chief witch meetings there had been present some French Canadians and some Indian Sagamores to concert the methods of ruining New England. This surely sent shivers down Cotton Mather's spine. Testimony came in against Samuel from Martha Sprague, Mary Walcott, Mary Warren, Joseph Ballard, Thomas Chandler, Ephraim Foster, Abigail Martin, and John Bridges. Martha Sprague and Mary Warren claimed to have been afflicted by Samuel during his examination on September 1st. Mary Walcott said she saw Samuel Wardwell's shape pull Martha Sprague off a horse. Joseph Ballard said that his brother John had told him that Samuel Wardwell had told him that Joseph Ballard had reported Samuel for bewitching his wife Elizabeth. However, according to Joseph, he hadn't even had any thoughts that his wife was bewitched until his brother told him this. And thus Samuel Wardwell may have got himself into trouble by going forward and stating that he was accused of bewitching Elizabeth Ballard, when nobody had actually made that claim officially. Thomas Chandler testified that Samuel Wardwell was much addicted to telling young people their fortunes and made sport of it. And Ephraim Foster claimed that Samuel had told his wife she wouldn't have a son until she'd had 5 girls, which came true. He also heard Samuel tell Dorothy Eames her fortune, and that Dorothy afterward called Samuel a witch, saying he could not have done what he had done otherwise. Ephraim described Samuel's technique to a limited degree. He, quote, would look in their hand and then would cast his eyes down upon the ground, always before he told anything. Abigail Martin had heard Samuel tell fortunes to John Farnham and James Bridges, revealing that Farnham was in love with a girl who wouldn't have him, and that James Bridges was in love with a 14-year-old girl. John Bridges heard his brother James say that what Samuel had observed was true. Samuel Wardwell was hanged on September 22nd, 1692, with 7 women: Martha Corey, Mary Esty, Alice Parker, Mary Parker, Ann Pudieter, Wilmot Red, and Margaret Scott. According to author Stacy Schiff in her book The Witches, Salem 1692, before he was hanged, quote, as Wardwell addressed the crowd, a cloud of smoke from the executioner's pipe drifted into his face. He began to choke. The devil interrupted him, sneered the accusers, who could not have liked what the freewheeling Wardwell had to say. He was innocent. No court could prove otherwise. Of 6 men killed by the witch trial authorities in 1692, Samuel was the only one who had not been accused of being abusive or violent. In September 1692, 5 confessors were convicted and condemned, but only Samuel Wardwell was actually hanged. Ann Foster, Mary Lacey Sr., Rebecca Eames, and Abigail Hobbs were not. They would eventually be reprieved at the end of January 1693. Sheriff George Corwin seized Samuel's property after he was hanged, and on September 26th, the selectmen of Andover asked the court in Ipswich what to do about the children left behind at the Wardwell house, as the parents and their oldest were unavailable to care for them. The court responded that they should be placed in, or, if necessary, bound out to, good and honest families. Samuel Wardwell Jr. was placed for a year with his uncle John Ballard, brother of the Joseph Ballard who had initially accused Samuel Wardwell Sr. William Wardwell went to Samuel Fry's home until he was 21, where he was apprenticed to be a weaver. Daniel Poor took in Eliakim Wardwell until he was 21, and John Stevens accepted Elizabeth Wardwell until she turned 18. The people who fostered the Wardwell children were instructed to leave them with the clothes on their backs when they turned them out at their coming of age. On January 10th, 1693, Sarah Hawkes, Mercy Wardwell, and Sarah Wardwell were tried for witchcraft. Mercy Wardwell was indicted and tried for covenanting with the devil, but she was acquitted. Stepsister Sarah Hawkes was indicted for covenanting and for afflicting Martha Sprague. She was also acquitted. Their mother, Sarah Wardwell, was actually convicted of afflicting Martha Sprague. The Superior Court of Judicature, which heard her case, convicted only her and two other people, all confessors. The others were Mary Post and Elizabeth Johnson Jr. Everyone else that came before them in 1693 was acquitted or cleared by proclamation. Fortunately for these three confessors and 5 other women, Governor Phipps reprieved their death sentences at the end of January. That, however, did not reverse the convictions, which would hang over them for many years, restricting their property and civil rights through a process known as attainder. In 1703, Abigail and Frances Faulkner filed a petition to reverse the attainders of Abigail Faulkner, Samuel and Sarah Wardwell, Rebecca Nurse, Mary Estey, Elizabeth and John Proctor, and Elizabeth Howe. In July 1703, Sarah Wardwell's attainder was reversed by an act of the General Court. Abigail Faulkner and Elizabeth Proctor were the only other 2 people included in this act. Sarah Hooper Hawkes Wardwell died sometime before February 19, 1712, when 6 Wardwell children were granted £36 and 15 shillings by the Compensation Committee. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Witch Hunt Victim Stories about Samuel Wardwell. Please continue to listen. Tune back in on Wednesday for our next full episode, and next weekend for another Witch Hunt Victim story. Thank you again. Have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.